August 2nd is rapidly approaching, and guess what? Congress and the president still don't have an agreement to raise the debt ceiling. That is causing a lot of concern amongst economists, most notably our man, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke. He's been using the word calamity, calamitous, other derivations of the C word to describe what could happen.
Calamari.
Calamari, if we don't raise the debt ceiling and potentially default. So Colin Barr from Fortune, I ask you, should the Fed do anything other than just issue dire warnings and scaremonger?
I think Bernanke's hoping it doesn't come to anything more than that. And I think that he's terrified that if he does do something, that it's going to turn the focus on the Fed. I think the Fed has had enough of being in the political crossfire. I think they didn't like that bit where they did QE2 and then everyone blamed them for food inflation and things like that. And I think that hasn't been forgotten. So I think you're going to have a replay of TARP 1, before the Fed even considers doing anything.
Right. So to remind our investors or our readers who may have forgotten about that, the replay of TARP 1, Dow fell nearly 800 points after Congress refused to pass the bank bailout the first time. Obviously, it did get passed after that. Now, I agree with you that the Fed probably doesn't have much of a say here, that they shouldn't really be doing anything before August 2nd. But if August 2nd rolls around and there is no deal, doesn't Bernanke, just based on past precedent, what he's been doing at the Fed, has to come out and do something? He's all about, oh, no, the markets are plunging. I have to maybe not get in front of it, but I have to do something now to staunch the bleeding.
It is an interesting question because I think the way that would play out is you would get a big sell-off in stocks. I think everyone's looking at the bond market, but if you look at Japan over the past 20 years, all kinds of bad things have happened over there, and the bond market has continued to trade basically at zero, 1.5% yield on 10-year bonds. I mean, I think we're in a similar situation there. I think that's the real risk here. We're looking at years of zero growth in this country, potentially. And so whether Bernanke steps in on that or not, in a sense, there's nothing he can do to change that. Congress is going to have to grow up at some point and start acting like adults and realize this is a long path back to fix all the problems we've taken on as a country for 3 decades. Not that they're doing that. Not that they'll ever do that.
No, wishful thinking. No, but as you mentioned, Bernanke and other Fed members get criticized for the rise in food, the rise in oil after QE1 and QE2.
Right.
Isn't he in a kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't type of scenario right now? He can't just sit back and do nothing, even though this really is a fiscal policy. Congress and the president have to kind of hammer this out.
That's right.
He kind of has to do something if the Fed's mandate is supposedly unemployment, trying to limit that, because we may not necessarily have a huge collapse the way some are predicting.
Right.
But one would think this is going to be good for the job market if the debt ceiling isn't raised.
No, that's right. It's just a disaster from every angle. I mean, if they come in and say we're going to try to prop up the economy by lending against Treasury's gold or something like that. I mean, how much Ron Paul's talk is there going to be then? Ron Paul, he's very courageous. I mean, that whole thing is ridiculous, and it just takes attention away from the fact that the real ridiculousness is taking place in Congress, and we elect Congress to do things responsibly for us and to fix our problems, and Congress is just not even coming close to doing that. And I do think that that's how Bernanke sees this right now. He's been urging Congress to take control of this issue, and they refuse to. And so, yes, he will be tempted to save us, but he's got to be saying to himself, I'm going to get blamed no matter what I do, so should I do it? Maybe I'll stand back this time and see what happens.
Right.
It's not a pretty thought.
No, not a pretty thought. I, for one, don't think that scenario plays out. I'll humbly disagree there. I think that if we have no agreement, he's probably going to come out with, maybe not call it QE3, but maybe some other alphabet soup-laden acronym for some new facility. But I think he'll try and do something.
Yeah. No, you could be right.
Whether or not it works is obviously
right. Well, it certainly won't work in terms of making any difference for the long term, which is just that we have millions of people who don't have jobs and who have no great prospect of getting jobs. Right. I mean, that's we need to at some point in this country start thinking about those problems, and we are not. We can't even pass the debt ceiling for crying out loud.
It's awful. Well, you mentioned numerous times how ridiculous this is. I think let's end this on a ridiculous, dare I say, even sublime note. Really I've got my hockey playoff beard, not shaving it until we have a debt ceiling raise. Obviously, Mr. Bernanke is doing the same. What about you?
Yeah, you're the new Michael Darda, I guess, because Michael Darda is the guy who said he wasn't going to shave until we were out of recession. I believe it didn't work out that way. He didn't like the unlike you, he didn't like the beard. So I can't comment.
Yes. Well, note to all of our loyal followers, most notably my wife, the beard's not going anywhere, even if we raise the debt ceiling. Thank you very much.